Hey, Planeswalkers, we have Friday night meta for you here. I'm excited to bring this back. I absolutely love this because it's great for new players and great for experienced players alike to see the shifts in the meta and get the relevant and latest and greatest information for you and your gameplay as always. So I'll be breaking down all the different formats here available to you down below in the timestamps where I break down both best of 1 and best of 3 as well. Additionally, appreciate your support as always. Great way to stay connected. And if you got a question, if you got a comment, do let me know because I love to hear from you. And there's a ton of community members in the Discord server as well. So thank you to everyone for their support there always. And we'd love to see you there. So let's get moving, let's get grooving and breaking this down here for you today. As we go through each of the pieces, I'll do a full blown out version of the complete meta from Bronze and Mythic, and then I'll hone in on the little bit more competitive slice so you can see a little bit of those tweaks. We are roughly halfway through the month, which means not always a ton of Mythic information yet. So that's why we'll leave it at probably more so Diamond and Mythic, at least at this point. And on top of that, this is going to be probably the final cut here before Brothers War, which I'm super excited to move with you into the new set. So here's what we got going on. Mono white dominating. We also have mono black aggro, Slezzy enchantments, mono black control, mono red aggro, mono blue tempo, Grixis vampires making some moves here, and then Esper mid-range. Now you can look at the popularity really up high here for mono blue, mono black aggro, and mono red. We have Slezzy enchantments. We got mono black control, mono white aggro, Grixis vampires, and Esper mid-range. So pretty succinct in terms of what we got going on. Roughly 30% right there. Then you got another 15 that puts us at about 45, 50, 60% really tied up in these decks. So not often that you're going to run into something else pretty well defined. Obviously, we've been here for a while with Dominaria, and that's just the way it works. But let's go ahead and take a look here as well at the more competitive space and see if there's some changes. Absolutely. Mono black aggro really pushing it towards the top. We see this fall in mono white aggro. We still have mono red aggro in there, and a lot of shifting in terms of what's being played. Mono blue tempo falling off by about 4% there, which is quite a bit. And you can see everything else kind of holding that steady eddy there towards the bottom. So let's go ahead and back this out and take a quick look at the trends because that's always important. We can see all these shifts happening here when we had the new month turnover here. And then additionally, when some of those changes happens, banner restricted, we see a couple of those pieces moving. Again, mono blue being one of that more favorite decks on that tempo side. We see the mono black aggro really lifting up and still doing okay here in the space. And then obviously the win rate over time, mono white sustaining a very, very high win rate there. We do see some fluctuations here between Slezzy enchantments and mono black aggro. And as that mono black aggro has really risen, the Slezzy enchantments is kind of fallen off there. Let's go ahead though. I do want to again look at this more competitive space because that's important for us as well. You can see very, very tight there in terms of popularity. Again, very refined meta in terms of win rates, fairly consistent. And then again, lots of changes here kind of at the start of the month and bouncing around, which is typical to be expected. So that is standard best of 1. Let's go ahead and take a look at best of 3. What do we got going on here? We got Rakdos mid-range, Gruul aggro, mono black mid-range, Grixis mid-range, Esper mid-range, Jund mid-range, mono blue tempo, and 5-color domain. Now again, this is at aggregate, and you can see how heavily played these ones are. Grixis mid-range, Esper mid-range at almost pretty much 50% in the meta. Everything else kind of in there, to be honest. So pretty much what you're going to run into. Now, as we look down here, we can see that popularity spike. We can see the same thing with Esper midrange. Really, really taken off there after that ban. Announcement, some of those changes there. And then additionally, you can see these mid-range or the win rates kind of changing over time. Now let's go ahead and dig into that more competitive space. A couple of moves here. We see Esper Legends really, really pulling up there, even though it's a little bit lower here in terms of played. Big win impact. Rakdos midrange, mono black midrange, Grixis midrange, 5-color domain. Everything else is still kind of in there. And then again, you can see some of the changes here on that popularity over time. And again, those win rates as well. So that is standard best of 3. We're going to blow all the way back, flip over to best of 1, and now take a look at Alchemy. So here in Alchemy, here's what we got going on. Red deck wins, mono red aggro being 20% of the meta. Lots of people on this list. Got mono red goblins pretty high up there as well. Then we got mono white aggro, Rakdos Sacrifice, Selesnya tokens, mono black control, Cruel Werewolves, Esper control, all in there. So fairly, even across the board in terms of what's being played. Again, massive amounts of popularity over time for mono red aggro, and again, still holding pretty well at the top there. We do see that mono Rakdos Sacrifice popping in as well in that space. Now, if we go to the more competitive space, again, a little bit of a change up here. You got mono white aggro pushing in, you got mono red aggro, you got Esper control, mono black control. Again, mono red aggro being the dominating deck here. Very high in percent win and everything else there for Alchemy. So let's pull all the way back out. Check out our best of 3. Let's see what we got going on. We do got a few decks here. Rakdos Sacrifice absolutely crushing at 80%. Mono red goblins doing very well at 70. The Esper midrange also almost at 70. Mono red aggro pretty high as well. And then Orzhov Sacrifice. Now, when we look at the percentage of the meta here, we do have a very solid 40% here at the top, which also means why you're seeing some really commanding win rates, because the consistency and the openness of the meta in terms of stuff that's kind of out there that's not solidified around here, driving very healthy win rates, as you can see here in terms of what's going on. So that's at the wide range. Let's drill in here and see if we got anything else. We do. Rakdos Sacrifice, Esper midrange, mono red aggro as well in the space. And again, you can see the commanding power there of these decks. So that is Alchemy best of 3. We're going to back out all the way and pop over to Historic. So in Historic, we got some stuff that's definitely shifted. We got Boros Affinity, Azorius Affinity, really pulling at the top here. We got mono red aggro has been a favorite. Is it Wizards falling down to 4? Now they're very close win rates. You got mono red goblins in there, Selesnya life gain, Azorius control, and mono green elves. So very tight race. Is it Wizards still being one of the most played decks? Mono green elves also in there. Azorius control, Azorius affinity, Selesnya life gain, Boros affinity, mono red aggro, and then mono red goblins. So again, this is at aggregate for best of 1. And we can see how these things have changed over time. Again, popularity of Is it Wizards. Now, again, you can see this win rate really taking off in the ban change in the set release here in Alchemy Dominaria in terms of that Boros affinity and some of those win rates as well to pay attention to. Now, let's go ahead and get some more competitive scene. And there are some changes here. We see that Azorius control popping up. We see a Boros affinity falling off a little bit, Azorius affinity falling off a little bit, Selesnya life gain, Selesnya enchantress, mono green elves, Is it Wizards, and the mono black. So pretty heavy there in terms of what we have going on. And then again, you can see the popularity over time in those win rates. So that is Historic best of 1. Now we're going to move over to best of 3 for Historic. We got Boros Steel, Azorius affinity, Rakdos goblins in there, Greasefang, Rakdos midrange, Is it Wizards, Azorius control, Jund midrange. 20% on Rakdos midrange, lots at Rakdos goblins, lots at Azorius control, affinity, Boros Steel in there, Is it Wizards falling off, Greasefang obviously falling off, and then Jund midrange. Wow, look at that. Rakdos midrange absolutely taking off when you see this in terms of best of 3. Additionally, the win rates over time, Boros still kind of pulling down, not Rakdos midrange doing the same, and then everything else there. So let's go ahead and see what we got available to us in the more competitive space. Again, fairly similar to what we saw before there as well, and we can see that. All right, so that is Historic for us today, my fellow Planeswalker friends. Let's move over to Explorer. So now for Explorer, here's what we got going on. We got mono blue spirits, Selesnya angels, Abzan, Greasefang, Rakdos sacrifice, mono red aggro, Azorius control, Rakdos midrange, mono black devotion in there. And then again, you can see the win rate percentages here, dominated by mono red aggro. Very good chunk of stuff in the meta. Fairly decent, tight in terms of win rates there. Again, popularity and trending over time. That mono red aggro being very strong in terms of popularity, and then the win rates being very strong for mono blue spirits here in terms of the format for Explorer. Now, let's go ahead and look at the competitive space, do a couple things change. We still have mono blue spirits dominating, very high played here. Mono red aggro still pretty high. Fast matches as always. Abs and Greasefang in there. Mono green elves. Celestia Angels and Rakdos Sacrifice. Now, Rakdos Sacrifice not doing super great. So that's Explorer Best of 1. We're going to pull all the way back. Again, go to Best of 3. Good amount of play here in Best of 3, which is great to see. We got Blue Spirits, Abs and Greasefang, 5-color Enigmatic. There you go. Mono red aggro, Rakdos Sacrifice, Esper Control, Azor's Control, and then Rakdos mid-range here in terms of these decks. Now, you can see this really pulling down in terms of popularity there. And then again, we got the mono blue spirits still dominating pretty heavy in terms of that win rate. Again, doing very well there. Let's go ahead and look at the more competitive scene. Not as much, not surprised. Abs and Greasefang, mono blue spirits, Rakdos mid-range, 5-color Enigmatic, Rakdos Sacrifice, and again, what's being played around the right, very dominated by Abs and Greasefang, Rakdos midrange, and mono blue spirits. So there we have it. All right, so we're going to pull all the way back out, and now we move over to Historic Brawl. So nice new take here on Historic Brawl. We do get to see Kinnan, has always been a favorite here. We got the first silver, we got Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief, that's a new one since we've done this. Go Shintai of Life's Origin, we got Yorok, Golos, Muldratha, and then Joda. So tons of 5-color decks, which is awesome to see. See tons of popularity there as well, and what we have going on in the meta. Now, Joda's definitely dropped off since the beginning, but really starting to see how these things are playing out, along with these win rates as well. The first sliver doing awesome, which is great, and I always like to see that. So I'm a big sliver fan. All right, so that, my friends, concludes today's episode for Friday Night Meta. Wanted to get through this and give you all the details in terms of what's going on. A lot of times I add in additional tournament context and those things, so we can definitely keep that in mind for some of the future episodes. But I wanted to make sure we captured this here for us as we transition into the new set for Brothers War and a new meta here relatively soon. So with that, Planeswalkers, thank you as always. I appreciate your support. Come swing by the Discord server and say hi. Otherwise, if you got a question or comment, please do let me know. I love to hear from you, and let me know what you think. On top of that, great ways to stay connected here, and a lot more stuff coming your way here on the channel. So take care. We'll see you soon. Until next time, Planeswalkers, Mythras out.